Coming up on That Was a Show? Baby Talk was a show. She's a single mother looking for love. He's a baby whose thoughts we can hear. That's pretty much it. It's Baby Talk. Join Brynn, Aaron, and Barry as they try to goo-goo gah-gah their way through this 90s dud that also featured the glorious hair of George Clooney.
We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince. But those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Byrne,
Aaron Yeger,
and Andrew Helmer as Barry.
a Radio Gizmo production.
I'll kick us off. Hi, Barry. Hi, Brynn.
Hey, Aaron.
Welcome to the studio.
I thought you were gonna call it so like who was a show? It's like, oh, that's not the name of it.
It's a show.
But that's not what you said. So hello, how are you guys doing?
We're okay.
Excellent.
You know, the sun is shining outside. It's
sure.
lovely spring day.
Birds are singing. Bees are trying to have sex with them.
Yeah.
As is my understanding.
Yeah. Episode 45.
45.
It's wild. How the hell have we done this for that long? Like,
I don't know. And it's definitely I know I said this before, but we've definitely gotten to a point where I could not name all of them. Like I could not tell you all the shows that we've done.
It's true.
Like, I'm so worried I'm gonna suggest a show we've already done. but honestly, like it just, it was my turn to pick this week, and it was so there's such a dearth of shows. You're just like, oh, look how many I can actually pick from. I was like between like 5. I was just like this one or this one or this one, and then I chose this one just because of George Clooney's hair. Like I was just like, how wild is this hair? I need to see more of it. Unfortunately, you don't really get to see all that much.
I know. Yeah. I agree. George Clooney's hair is the high watermark for this series.
It is. All right, so let's get into it then. Let's reveal what the hell we covered this week.
All right.
Before we get into this particular show, I just want to give a little trigger warning. So the second season of this series, after its retooling, which we will talk a bit about, features Scott Baio. And I'm not even being funny when I say that talking about Scott Baio may require a trigger warning. I did a little research again, looking at his Wikipedia page in preparation for this recording, and I regret looking at that.
After the success of the hit movie Look Who's Talking, ABC promptly ordered a series. Bizarrely enough, as the movie's sequel prepared to release, Look Who's Talking 2, the network got scared that people would confuse the marketing of the two and change the name to Baby Talk before the show even started. The show, like the movie, centers around the concept that the audience can hear the very adult thoughts of babies. The show centers around Maggie Campbell, played in the first season by Julia Duffy. She's trying to raise her son Mickey, who's voiced by Tony Danza. The first season was about Maggie fending off the advances of the various men floating through her still under construction loft apartment. Most notably, a young George Clooney, playing one of our favorite Twas tropes, the hunky deadbeat. The show lasted 2 seasons, with the second season featuring a complete retool and recast. We watched 2 episodes, the premieres of each season.
I love a good retool. Like, the retool might be my favorite thing we've discovered in this journey.
I'm going to go as far as to say that in this case, it's almost the D-tool. Because it's almost like they looked at a show that was not quite working, and they were like, how do we strip out whatever is working and just leave ourselves with nothing?
Well, okay.
I disagree. I actually think the retool, I think the retool kind of structures it into a better show.
Well,
I mean, again,
I agree.
groans about Scott Baio aside, I mean, at the time, that was a good move for them.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Scott Baio being a complete like scuzzbucket doesn't really change the fact that like in this time, he was a very charismatic actor. So it was a good get for them. Right?
Yeah. And okay, just plot wise too, it makes way more sense. like nothing from the first season was sustainable.
I agree that it makes more sense.
Yeah.
But, okay, maybe it's not fair to say that it is that much worse, but I don't think it's necessarily a huge improvement. Like, there's still weird logic flaws.
I think it's a bet. Okay. You hit us. What logic flaws?
Go for it, Aaron.
When the boss comes to her apartment out of nowhere, like Kramer, no boss of any company would ever do that.
Yeah.
All of the weird chain of events. I mean, we should really talk about this more when we get to that episode. Yeah. But the plot of the season 2, episode 1 thing with the kind of baby getting traded off to various people and her not knowing where her baby is, like, I get why that's like, I get the stakes. I don't get the even at that time, phone calls would have been placed. Conversations would have happened differently.
Yeah.
Like, people don't just pass someone's baby around. Like, responsible people that you are supposed to be sympathetic to don't pass someone's baby around like it's like a borrowed DVD box set.
She's justifiably upset about this, and everybody minimalizes her feelings about not knowing where her baby is.
And I guess my biggest thing is that, the premise of the series is baby talk. Like you said, we can hear the thoughts of the babies. However, 90% of the screen time is ultimately the plots around the adults. And in the moments where we do hear what the babies are thinking, half of them feel like such filler.
Well, yeah, it's just a straight up gimmick, and they're just capitalizing on the gimmick and the premise of the movie. And this whole silly plot made more sense as a movie because it's like a self-contained story, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but if you're going to do it, it makes more sense as a movie. But what my point was from the first season is that all the characters and all the situations
nonsense
don't make any sense and could not have been sustainable. Like, the fact that this group of men were working in her loft.
Yeah. Well,
that's such a temporary thing. Like, they're set up to be characters, but how could they be ongoing characters?
Well, let's bring the audience.
Yeah. All right. Let's explain
the first episode.
Let's explain.
But I just want to say,
how are so many things taking place in the doctor's office?
I know. Look, I just want to cap off my answer to your question with to me, the retooling doesn't address the flaws in that central premise of how do you make the baby talk elements. I mean, literally the baby's talking element of the show.
You can't make that sustainable.
How do you make that sustainable and entertaining? And I don't think the retooling even pays attention to that, because that's the one element that they didn't modify.
I love that the baby actor doesn't change.
I know, he stays the same.
It's
two little
great.
twins. Yeah. But yeah,
of course, they're always twins.
The thing that I'm saying is not sustainable is basically the ensemble cast in that first season.
And that's the biggest retool. Yeah. And the second season's ensemble cast is a lot more sustainable.
It's a lot more, makes sense. But anyway, Barry, you explain now to everybody out there what the hell this thing is about and what
So the first episode we watched, which was the pilot, basically has, it's the first season in a microcosm. It's about a single mother who's, basically constantly on the verge of a breakdown. She's living in this unfinished loft, which is invaded by handymen of various levels of ineptitude. Primarily, she's mostly concerned with George Clooney's Joe. And again, I cannot stress enough how glorious his hair is.
Yes.
I mean, we've only seen George Clooney with one haircut our entire lives.
Yeah.
So to know that this glorious lion's mane at one time existed. Like the product, the lift in this hair is
it's a
just
luscious, curly,
incredible.
like mullet thing. Like
volume
it is,
and density.
It's very. And normally, I do not like that hairstyle, but he was he was making it work. He was rocking it.
Yeah, actually, and that's the thing about what works with the first season, despite. The central premise being like they're always working on her loft. They're bad at their jobs and she's paying for them to be there. And they get into her life. They get into her life basically. And like, they're always helping out.
They helped her make dinner at one point.
They helped her make dinner. But what does work in the first season, and it's very obvious that it's not going to be sustainable either, is Clooney's great. Like he is such, he's a hunky deadbeat. But very quickly on, he's, showed to be a very good-natured, grounded man.
Yeah.
They have, I guess they're setting up a will they, won't they?
Yeah.
But at least in the first episode, like he is very much like just a support for her and like he kind of helps her through life. So he's the main one, but then they've got Howard, who's a complete idiot of an electrician who it's, he's not an idiot. It's just his first time. It's his second house. So he's just cautious doing the wiring.
Yeah.
And then there's Mr. Fogarty, who's just drunk. And like, that's the whole character.
I mean, it's basically Three Stooges-esque.
Yeah.
The other guys, not Clooney so much, but the other two.
So there's like, So there's like 5 minutes bouncing back and forth between these people. And you're like, what in the hell is going on? And we still don't even get into the main plot of the episode. For us to get into the main plot of the episode, she takes a trip to the pediatrician's office where, again, everyone is so involved in her personal life. Like the stakes of her being a single mother are just so abhorrent to everybody she meets that they dig into her life and she just accepts that.
Yeah.
Like not
It's
once
so
is she
weird.
like, oh my God, like why is the doctor and his assistant care so much about my dating life?
Yeah.
She's fine with it.
And I guess like little kids have to go to the doctors quite often.
They do.
But the way they set it up is like she's literally there every other day. Like with this kid.
Oh yeah. They're like, oh yeah.
And I read in the Wikipedia that the doctor's supposed to pursue her as well and likes her.
Yes, they end up in a romantic relationship around mid-season, which is super unprofessional.
Yeah.
But,
And this is also one of the worst parts of the show, which is that from the start, they set it up as like a big undercurrent is going to be if she doesn't get a man into her life, she's not complete. Like, there's no way that she can possibly just be a single parent. Like, she's not dating for the purposes of, like, romance or companionship. No. It's more just like, what the hell is wrong with you to be trying to live in New York and raise a kid as this single woman, you disgusting wretch? We have to get a man into your life. And season 2, although they take a very different tactic in the way they present that, still goes after that theme.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it is the theme of the show.
Yeah.
So she's at the doctor's office, and through some various shenanigans, she ends up dating this hotshot single father, because of course it was just going to be another single father, because of course it would be, and B, you got to get another baby in the mix.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you got to get another baby.
And he's played by, Married with Children's Ted McGinley.
Jefferson Darcy.
Yeah. So, he's always a likable presence.
Yeah.
So we spend some time on the first episode on their first date, and then we flash forward 3 weeks later.
I missed the flash forward. I missed that. In the next scene, she's putting together this home cooked meal, which is, like sitcom trope. She got takeout, and Clooney and the boys are helping her, put together this evening, because she has a very, it's been 3 weeks. They've spent 3 lovely weeks together. And now he has something really important to tell her. And she's like, well, he's going to propose because it's the 1920s, and 3 weeks of dating. 3 weeks,
it's natural. So he does propose. And then she, she says no because she's like, well, this isn't what I want. Because, she has a little bit of a talk with Clooney, and Clooney's like, are you sure, you want to do this? And she's like,
also, the proposal includes I'm moving to Denver and want you to come with me element.
Yeah. So she says no, and then he celebrates because he also didn't want to marry her, but he's also doing it for his daughter. This could have been an interesting character moment where, like, you could be saying something about, like, yeah, like, they're both in it for the wrong reasons, and, like, they're both, like, lonely, but they want another parent. But no, we just make the joke all on her, and, like, he's dumping on her, like, oh, I don't want to be with you anyway. And she's like,
and she's still swooning for him.
She's swooning for him.
Yeah,
she did want to be with him.
Terrible.
And it's just terrible.
The kisses and the ugh.
So that's essentially the first episode. The best thing about describing this episode is not once in that long ass description did I even mention babies talking.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
because
it
like
was
Aaron
so
said,
minor.
it's very
Yeah.
incidental. I mean, you get it. Like, you only get, like, when you have babies in a show, like, you get a couple of shots of them and you got to do what you got, right?
yeah.
So there is a baby subplot. It's terrible. Like, Mickey falls in love with the, Jefferson's baby, Danielle.
Which is also named Danielle, which is very confusing because in the second season, the other baby's name is Danielle.
Because they don't care.
They don't care. Yeah.
They don't care one bit.
and
So
back
he's
to-
in love with her and she's in love with him, and they have these, like, little
These
conversations
little
about
baby.
Yeah.
this baby angst.
Which
Yeah.
is weird, but for 1990 and given the success of the films, I can see why they would think that would work. But, like, to my point about the detooling, at least in that season 1 pilot, the babies almost have a subplot in the sense that they're, like, forming this sort of whatever relationship with each other that's now going to be separated because the adults are breaking up and he's going to move away.
Sure.
In season 2, episode 1, there's babies talking, but they don't even attempt a through line. It's just random non sequiturs.
Well, I mean, the baby's very involved in the season 2 episode. Like, he is the central part of the plot.
He's
At least in the second
Yeah.
episode, like, the plot does center around the baby.
The baby is, but I'm talking about the baby talk.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, we don't need to hear the baby's voice and inner thoughts for that plot to work. That's like, you don't need that.
Cute kid, though.
Just-
Cute
yeah.
kid.
Very cute kid.
All
All of the babies are
yeah.
top-notch babies.
top-notch babies, some real 9 out of 10 babies in there,
Yeah.
I want to ask, by the way, this is like a little off topic, but like to the point about George Clooney, should we at this point have some sort of hunky deadbeat ranking or ladder system where they can like move up and down by voting? Because I feel like George Clooney may quickly sweep to the top of the hunky deadbeat ladder.
Well, because he's got the Clooney charm,
Yeah.
He's got all the hunky deadbeat markers,
Yeah.
plus that Clooney, that irresistible Clooney charm.
Yeah.
He's effortlessly good.
Effortlessly.
In this. And like, you like him almost immediately.
Yeah.
Like, he's just
Yeah. If you're a
he's-
network executive and you watch that pilot, you look at it and say, you know what? I don't want to watch more of this show, but that guy, we're pulling him out of this. Like, we're just like taking a helicopter,
think he pulled himself
we're
out of
lifting
this.
him out of this show and plopping him in something else.
So that's interesting. So he did pull himself out of this. And he wasn't the only one who pulled himself out of this. So
a lot of them couldn't get the fuck out faster.
Yeah. So, Clooney, he was gone after, he didn't even make it the season. Like, he did 5 episodes.
Yeah.
He did 5 episodes.
He just charmed them out of his contract, I guess.
Well, he just did a great, the network wasn't happy with any of this, right? So I think they were all too happy to let him go. Basically, he said, the show didn't make it because of writer-producer Ed Weinberger, who was a single-handed nut. He's a madman, in my opinion, he added, so I don't get sued. So, he was a big... another thing is, like, Julia Duffy, who plays Maggie in this, wasn't even the first.
I know.
They shot several episodes with another actress who begged to be let go. And then they had to go, they had to reshoot it. Yeah. which is even funny because
Yeah.
then you get into the second season, and we go to our detooling or retooling or tooling, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And Julia Duffy's gone. Completely different looking actress in place.
Yeah.
We
Not
get
even another blonde lady.
not even another blonde lady. And the best thing is looking into it, you're like, oh wow, they let her go. It wasn't working. No, she begged to be let go of she asked to be let out of the contract. And they had to recast her because the show was so critically reviled.
Yeah.
Like this was often remarked upon to be the worst show on television when it was on. And they were particularly harsh to her, and she asked to be let go. So,
which is weird because there was nothing wrong with her performance.
No, but she also knew it was a sinking ship.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I feel like she has a very specific presence. Like she has a very she comes across as sort of, she's kind of like Shelley Long in Cheers. Like there's like that similar Diane Chambers vibe.
Right. Okay.
It's like that very kind of like uppity sort of like, I don't know. It's like this kind of
a bit of a holier
snooty,
than thou snootiness.
Yeah. There's a bit of a class. There's a class distinction between her and the boys.
In the immediately following this, she takes a role where this is very suiting, but we'll get into that later with the spinoff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with Julia Duffy. I think it was the perfect contrast between her and Clooney, because the whole idea was they were trying to do that trope that they did in the movie, which I don't think the movie Look Who's Talking was that successful in that sense, because it was supposed to be career mom trying to make it work, and she's a career woman and she's really bright and tough and hardworking, and then the guy that she falls for is a very just charming working class guy. So it's that kind of contrast that's supposed to exist, and I think they actually do it more successfully in the series for this season because she has that very specific presence. She's very put together and a bit uptight kind of, Anyway, but whereas in the movie, Kirstie Alley is that character. She plays Molly instead of Maggie, but it's basically the same character because they're both accountants. But she's definitely, although a working mom, is very coded as very working class and is very Anyway, but yeah, I get why they cast it that way and why they did it that way, but obviously the audience couldn't connect to it. They just found her too grating or something, which is annoying, but...
I mean, the audience just had problems with every aspect
because
of the show.
Wasn't good.
Right? Yeah. It wasn't good. This is one of the worst shows we've watched, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to call out a couple of bad stylistic choices that aren't to do with the acting. One is that slapstick gag where the contractor plugs the wires in.
Oh,
and
my
this
God.
strange thing happens where the kitchen goes haywire and water's spraying and stuff's flying out of the fridge.
Like that.
And it's it's this,
in the 90s.
It's a super intense, over-the-top slapstick gag that would have required rigging a whole set with all of these effects.
Yeah.
But they don't revisit that style. It's a one-off in the episode. And I'm big on the concept of
Aaron wants more giant room shattering set pieces.
Yeah, I'm just big on the motif rule that if you're not going to do something at least 3 times, don't do it, because if you can't commit to it truly being part of your style, I like slapstick, but only when you're committing to it, not when it's this random thing out of left field that happens once. And then the other weird style choice is someone needed to take those zoom lenses away from them. They abused those zoom lenses. I do think they may have done away with that in season 2, which was the right thing to do. And maybe that's part of the transition, stumbling from the 80s into the 90s. But whew.
Yeah.
That thing with all of those contractors living in the loft there and just perpetually working on it. Does feel like a concept that would work in a feature film, in a one-off, but doesn't make sense in a series. So the one credit I will give to season 2 retooling
Yeah.
is that at least they made it more like a sitcom, whereas
Yeah,
season 1 feels like ideas that could only work in a feature film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's my whole point. Like, instead, like, the love interest is the building super. So he has a reason to be there all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, see,
But make him Clooney.
And the other main characters are like neighbors
Clooney was
and
long
coworkers.
gone,
I
man.
know,
he-
but
Yeah.
I'm saying if originally they had thought to make
I know,
Yeah.
but
Clooney
this
a super,
wasn't well thought through, Aaron. This
Clearly.
was rushed to camera.
clearly,
obviously.
clearly, if they had just taken a beat.
They needed at least 12 rewrites or whatever, but
Yeah,
they clearly
yeah.
were like really horny for this, like making this stupid Look Who's Talking spin-off. Like they really, really wanted to make this happen. So they did not give it any thought whatsoever.
Oh no, not at all. And like, that quote from Clooney about the showrunner, I mean, pretty much shows you, what was going on, right? I mean, so, not only that, but by the second season, that guy was fired and like fired from the studio, not like let out of the show. Like, no, like the studio wanted him gone.
Wow.
Like, you'll never work in this town again, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
kind of firing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So essentially, all right. So we, whatever. We'll go through this as quick as possible. Getting into the second season, Clooney's gone. Egg Weinberger's gone. In his place, they got Saul Turtletub and Bernie Ornstein, who are big sitcom guys.
They created one of the boys to
Yeah,
remind
yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. Julia Duffy's long gone. In her place is they bring in sitcom ringer Mary Page Keller.
Who we remember as Ricky Wilder from Camp Wilder.
Ha.
That's right. And what else is gone? Pretty much everything except for Mickey the baby.
Tony Danza, they were committed to.
Yeah.
For everybody out there worried, the baby did not lose his job.
No,
or
baby.
or his brother's job. So the two of them, they were safe. Job security for babies, it was very important to ABC. So we got a new apartment, we got new neighbors, we got a new hunky deadbeat, played by sitcom heartthrob and real life yuck bucket Scott Baio. And yeah, like you guys said, Baio played the building super, and he was going to be I obviously he would make his way to love interest, but first he's sort of introduced as more of he's going to be a male figure in Mickey's life.
Yeah.
And again, Baio-ness aside, the character is fine, and he has he's kind of funny, has kind of a sweetness to him, and like right off the bat, the show is in a better place. It is in my opinion, not in Aaron's opinion. In my opinion, the show is in a better place in that you can see this being sustainable, right?
Yeah.
You have multiple characters who have reasons to be around. And you easily, and she's going to go back into the office a few days a week. So then you can introduce a little bit of a workplace setting for her, and then you have people who can watch Mickey. So right off the bat, this is an easier place to take a sitcom. It lasted a full season this time around. Like first season was only like 12 episodes, didn't get the back 9. And the second season did do a full 22, right? So it's a TGIF show. As I was looking into it, I was noticing apparently, the TGIF always had the little show, the character intros and whatnot. Like Salem would be like hanging out and introducing shows. Well, obviously Mickey was the one they had here introducing like the other programs. And yeah, they love Tony Danza as a voice. It's kind of funny because like Danza's doing a real, like, he's not doing it's not necessarily doing a voice, but like you really do feel the influence of Bruce Willis's performance from the movie, where I'm like, I feel like,
noted that. It sounded like he was doing an impression of Bruce Willis's baby voice. So if anyone out there hasn't seen the Look Who's Talking movies, it's like, so basically Kirstie Alley is the mom who is the single mom, and the baby is Mikey instead of Mickey.
Yeah.
And like the baby is voiced by Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
And the love interest, who kind of fits the hunky deadbeat trope, but I don't really want to call him a deadbeat because the character is great. It was played by John Travolta. So it's like a whole, they're trying to do the exact same thing, and it does really, like, the thing before I even realized it was Tony Danza, because I didn't even realize it was Tony Danza until halfway through that first episode.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, whoever this voice actor is, they're really trying to do an impression of Bruce Willis's voicing of that baby. And I just thought that was really funny. I'm glad they saved us from that whole montage of the sperm and egg from the original movies.
Yeah, that was brutal. That's a reason for not rewatching the original movies. Once you get past that,
there's many reasons to not watch those movies. They're not good.
I'm curious. I am curious.
I have rewatched them as an adult when I was like,
really?
out of that same curiosity, Barry. I rewatched them it was one of those nights where I like couldn't sleep, and it might have been during the pandemic. I can't remember, but it was one of those nights where I was up in the middle of the night with anxiety, and I just had to put something dumb on TV to calm my nerves and go back to sleep. And I watched like the entirety of the first Look Who's Talking movie.
Wow.
And
right
that's
on.
usually what I turn to when I'm, in that, where it's like an old movie from like my childhood where I'm just like,
I do that. Yeah.
I'm okay with falling asleep in the middle of it, but I'm weirdly curious to revisit it.
The only thing I was going to add there is the only thing I remember about the movies to this day is, Bruce Willis's voice work in it is very funny.
It is very funny. Yeah.
He's a great voice actor, and he didn't do a lot of that in his career.
Yeah.
So it's always enjoyable to see him. And man, did that there's three of them. There's Look Who's Talking 2.
Yeah.
There's Look Who's Talking Now.
With dogs in the third one. Ugh.
With the dogs.
I was going to say also, I had the same reaction in the first episode where I didn't initially recognize the voice, and I had to look it up to confirm, and I was like, oh, it's Tony Danza. And then my next thought was like, I hope that at some point the baby says Ayo, OA.
So what's funny is that they eventually do bring in Danza for one episode, and he plays the father.
I read that, yeah.
Oh God, it's so stupid. Well, and he was doing this at the same time as he was on finishing up his run on Who's the Boss.
Yeah.
So basically, Danza was like the king of sitcoms at that time.
Danza and Bayo.
Yeah, Danza and Bayo. They're making bank.
And Mary Page Keller.
Yeah.
Also,
I like her. I like her a lot more. She's a much more dependable presence in this. And I think, like I said, like everything about the retool for me works better. It's still not good.
No, it's still a garbage show. But
it's closer to competency than.
Yeah, and I mean, I did like the addition of what's her name, Francesca Roberts.
Yeah,
she was
like
fun.
a coworker.
No, she was fun too. But the neighbor.
The neighbor.
And then the neighbor baby, the new Danielle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, she was a fun addition because she was like, like they had a fun rapport. But it was just, so it was like a decent, like the people that they chose to add were fun and the mom as well. Like the mom.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun, but it was like annoying because it brought in a lot more of that. Oh, you need to get married.
I found the mom.
Yes.
I found the mom character, not the actor, but the character grating, and I found it to be like a non sequitur that existed only to like once again reintroduce like, oh, you gotta get a man into your life, which she pretty much like explicitly says.
It's early 90s America. The audience was already shaming her themselves. Like they didn't need the characters to do it.
I'm glad that we haven't completely overcome that bullshit, but like I think there is more acceptance now of single mothers.
But I guess that's why to me it's a detooling, it's because like on the one hand, I like the workplace dynamic that's been added and getting the contractors out of the apartment.
Yeah.
But then you throw in the mom in this episode.
I think you just hate
and
Scott. You just hate Scott Baio, man.
Well, that's
we
yes.
can't get over it.
I can't. It's hard for me to get past that right now. But also, if I'm giving some points to something that they did fix, in the season 1 giant New York loft apartment with the elevator, the industrial elevator that opens right into her living room.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. This accountant and single mom lives in a loft that you would expect would house conservatively 5 to 7 artists / rock stars. No, not having it. And to their credit,
the set was terrible. It didn't look. It didn't resemble any form of like living space you've ever seen.
But you guys just humor me for a minute though. Like back then, like we're talking like early 90s, would a loft have been the swanky pad that it is now?
Yes.
It would still be that.
They were hot. They were the hot tip. This is like probably starting in the 80s is when they started being the hot.
Because it seems like it's like, oh, that's the type of place that you get because you can't afford like a doorman building or something. So you get that and then you have to like get people to customize it.
Yeah, that would have still been crazy expensive.
Maybe that is, in reality, they were hot. But I do see what you're saying is that narratively, it tends to be like you're broke and you have a loft. But in reality, it was never, it was not like that.
I'm not even talking about the fiscal realism of it. I'm talking about like you are a young parent raising a child in what looks like a place where people like get stoned and play music. Like it just does not look like a home.
She's uptight.
It doesn't fit her personality at all.
Like she looks like she should live in like Elaine Bennis's apartment on Seinfeld.
And then she does.
And then she does.
And then she does.
When you see season 2,
but that one is really swanky too.
So
it's the classic debate of sitcoms set in New York City that they have real estate that makes 0 sense for their income level and their socioeconomic status. Like it has, that's just the timeless thing where they make them in these aspirational dwellings and homes in New York City that make 0 sense. It's always going to be that way no matter how good or bad the show is. That's just the way it is, apparently.
So season 2, they get her into an apartment that looks more conventionally what you'd expect to see as a family home type of scenario.
Yeah.
Which, again, like I said before, like season 2 does feel more like a sitcom. It does. I agree. It seems more sustainable. But that place as well would be really expensive still. And let's assume she can afford it. Then the other thing that I found kind of irritating was that they do launch into the premise of her moving there as if it's like kind of a bad neighborhood, like it's kind of gritty and, watch out, lock your doors, and the side conversation with the neighbor about like having a gun and, talking about how like, and the mom is super skeptical of her moving to Brooklyn and stuff like that.
Heights.
Brooklyn Heights is a posh neighborhood. It was then, it is now. Yeah. It was not a scary, quote unquote, place to move to.
But people just thought the city was scary back then.
No. But she moved from a loft in Manhattan. Brooklyn Heights would be, for a young family, the more normal choice. Even then.
And then you get there, but the apartment is nicer,
the
right?
Apartment
it is a nicer building.
So that's why I'm like, why are you talking about it as if it's a sketchy place?
Yeah.
I have one thing which I love is like, what was their boner for building like elevators into their sets? Like, both, like at least the first one, the freight elevator, like they pulled it off, like it was fine. But oh my God, was the elevator terrible and not measured properly? Like the elevator in this set, they couldn't even fit a person in it. Like they had to like go sideways to get in, and you were like, "Come on, guys,
it's true.
This is lazy. Just don't do the elevator."
Like you see those elevators in sitcoms more than they exist in real life. Like those like right in apartment elevators.
Yeah.
Like they don't they just love that in sitcoms because it's just like it's a great literal and figurative set piece. Like it's I don't know, they just like love it because it's just it's such a like
Yeah.
trope or signifier of like the urban lifestyle.
It
I
also
guess.
means that you can have elevator scenes without having to build a hallway set.
Yeah, and it just
But they didn't. But that's the thing is that they didn't build an elevator that you could have done. You could not have shot in an elevator because that was too small,
yeah.
right? So they did build these big hallway sets or set. They probably did. If you notice, they just wheel out the back because the first one's got the door in it, and then they wheel in, and it's just got a wall. So it's the exact same set,
Yeah.
just with a different. They slide in the wall, right? It's very economical. I'm just saying, make the elevator fit, guys. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
I don't know. I think they just we see the same thing in workplace comedies. Like they love in a sitcom to have someone enter the scene in an elevator. Like
Rachel
doors
Gunn
open.
RN
Yes.
did that.
The Rachel
Yeah.
Gunn RN, we saw that in Good Advice. We saw that in like
But those elevators worked.
yeah, I know.
They were conceivably elevators.
I know, but it's just there's like a thing where it's like, oh, you gotta have the elevator door open to reveal the character for this comedic bit. Like it's just gotta be the thing,
Well, it's good. It's good. It's good, easy business. It's a good way to start a scene,
Yeah.
But it's it's not a good set. Not a good set at all.
No.
Also, the line about how the super is also a songwriter, that immediately made me think, am I going to have to listen to Bayo sing again?
Definitely at some point.
Is it just Chachi all over again?
But I will say this, an interesting throwaway line, because, in a lot of cases, a lot of superintendents of buildings are doing what he's doing, which is living rent-free, doing some stuff around the house so he can pursue his passions, right?
Yeah.
So it was an interesting, bit of business I'm glad we didn't stick around long enough to see him sing. But from a character point, it's fine. It's fine, Also, he doesn't really know what he's doing, which I'm sure unfortunately happens with a lot of new supers. I've had some interesting ones. So
the whole work from home controversy, which is a big part of the plot in that episode, where it's clear that like she's been working from home or wants to continue to do so, presumably because she has a young baby.
Yeah.
And the boss wants her back at the office. And it seems like being back at the office also generally means like the potential for working late into the evening and stuff like that. That's an interesting plot point in the context of what we've all been living through over the last couple of years.
It was, yeah.
That, the idea that she would want to continue to work from home, doing a job like accounting, which you obviously can do from home, does not seem controversial anymore, and that plot point doesn't hold up. But like, I can understand how
without the internet,
I understand I understand the boss's frustration here. I mean, she's literally
she wasn't even working in that one episode.
No.
She like didn't check in with the office until like 3 p.m. or whatever.
She
did nothing the whole day.
Yeah. So given all of that, and for the fact that it's 1991, it's like, okay, that's like an interesting, fun like plot, like a thing that's happening. Although I still think it makes absolutely no sense that he came by her apartment and just
that's
charges in
the
there.
Line,
That's writing though. You never,
you
don't have phone conversations.
I know. That's pure sitcom logic.
You have drop-bys, right? You have drop-bys.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, the casting of the boss was, I don't know who that actor is, but that look is like such a 1991. This guy's the boss.
Wait, like, what's the boss's name?
Like the kind of that specific balding sort of guy with that type of suit.
He just looked like he looked like my dad in the 90s.
It's just there's a certain look that seemed to be very common at that time, where it's like the character is working at a company that is somehow like a corporate or accounting or banking or something like that. And the boss always looked like that guy.
It was the look.
Yeah.
It was the opposite of the long, hunky hair that suggests that someone's going to be the will they or won't they target. Yeah. This is the hair that,
they were coding that he was never going to be an option.
Exactly. Coding for that.
It seemed like in season 2, they tried to make Bayo's hair very distinctive as well, because they like gave him highlights.
Yeah.
And that was really weird to see.
Yeah.
And I don't know what choice that was. Like if that was like, oh, like Clooney had really distinctive hair, so we got to get this other love interest, really distinctive hair. Or was that them being
I
like,
think it's just 1990s, man.
or he was just trying to like, you know, separate himself from his other characters like Charles in Charge and like Chachi. Like he wanted to look different. I don't know.
Maybe. I think it's just the 90s, man. That's how he showed up.
Maybe. Or I'm right? Like he had highlights. He had like I'm looking at I remember. Yes, he definitely had highlights.
I don't know what that means, so
yeah,
I'll take your word
he
for
had
it.
like blonde streaks, like
What?
lighter
No.
streaked hair,
Did he?
basically. Yeah. I mean, I remember it from like watching it, and now I'm looking at photos from IMDb, and yeah, I see some light streaks. It's not the like really dark brown.
I see Scott Baio. I start drifting.
Man, there's like a photo here. I'm just like scrolling through like the photos on IMDb, and there's like a photo of Clooney with a backwards cap and that mane coming out and the sideburns. Like it is sexy.
Is it the one where he's feeding the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's epic hair.
I let it play when I was writing my my show stuff today. So I saw in the background, I saw about 3 or 4 episodes in the background.
Yeah.
And again, like Clooney is just always great. And like he just looks great. He gives like he's really given his all in some of these scenes. Like he gives a really like sweet talk to the babe. Like the scene where he is feeding the kid, like it's a really sweet. He's given it. There's a bit of a monologue where he's talking about like how he's gonna get by in life and stuff. Actually, one thing I really liked in the retool, the episode ends with Maggie having a talk with Mickey and telling him, kind of telling him like. It's a very sweet, like, she's like, and you're going to play baseball. Or if you don't want to play baseball, that's fine too. Like, it doesn't matter to me what you do. You don't have to like sports. But if you do, I'll be there. And like, you're going to be a good kid. And I really, it was the one moment in the whole thing that I was like, that's kind of sweet.
I actually appreciated that little, like, it was very like, instead of show, don't tell, it was tell. But it was sweet because it was like trying to show like, oh, he doesn't need another parent. Like that's, and that actually, like, there are parts of that I was like, oh, this is actually like very like empowering. Like this is proving to the mom, and the mom is like, the mom says, like has a moment with her right after because she overhears this. And she's like, telling her how proud she is of her. So that was nice. And I was like, oh, that is like pretty progressive for the time.
I liked that moment. I did think that was quite nice. Mm-hmm. The part that started to ruin it a little for me was, again, the dynamic with the mother there. Not the part about, like, in theory, the mother coming around to trusting her daughter's judgment, but the part where when the mother overhears something that the daughter says that seems to give her a thread of suggestion that the super character is going to be a bigger influence in their lives. Whether it's romantic or not, even if it's just like to have some sort of male figure to help care for the child, you could see how the mother like lights up at the knowledge that like, don't worry, she's going to let this dude across the hall into her life. Yeah, that was the part where I was like, nah, that ruined it for me. Like I would have preferred that scene without the mother and just like that nice moment. Yeah, that they between her and the baby.
They were just tidying up some business from the plot of this. I agree. I think the mother does ruin them. She does ruin the moment completely.
I think they should have just kept him out. Like they should have just kept him out. Instead of keeping the mom out, just keep him out. Because that's where it should have ended. It should have ended with mom being like, oh, no, you don't need a man. You're fine. Like, you got this kid covered and I will support you. I will continue to support you and, like, help you raise this kid.
The mom's terrible, though.
I know she's terrible. She's terrible. And she makes the moment about herself. Yes, she does. But what I'm saying is. Yeah. Most moms.
You want to see an arc for the mother character where she does redeem herself, and my prediction
of adult women do that a lot.
Prediction, given that I'm not willing to watch any more episodes to see if this is correct, is that the mother, at least not for a while, she doesn't get better. I predict that her presence in the show is to continue to hammer on about the idea that you got to get a man into your life and to not really trust her daughter's judgment to raise that child.
Yeah.
I think in a weird way, like, I think, again, it's not well written. It's not anything. It does seem funny that both the first episodes of these seasons do sort of end up setting up the idea that she doesn't need somebody else. Like, both of them
like,
sort of end that.
Very valuable.
And even and in both cases, both of them end with her realizing maybe there can be male influences in his life that aren't necessarily romantic.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that is sort of the point the show was attempting to get through, not succeeding, but attempting, because she's still not she doesn't look at him as a romantic partner at all at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But she does say it might be okay to have him around in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that that's somewhat interesting. I don't think that it would ever, obviously there's going to be a will they, won't they?
100%.
But at this point, it's just not in there.
Mercifully, we didn't have to see it.
And same in the pilot. Like, Clooney is not set up as a romantic interest for her. And to be honest, again, I watched 3 or 4 of them in the background, and he isn't ever really.
That's
like
weird,
he maintains the role of like kind of a confidant, almost like he's protective, but it feels older brotherly at times. And then
probably
there isn't,
because you couldn't believe those two together. Like, they had zero chemistry. But
that is surprising, though.
Yeah. So that's what my point is. Maybe the show was attempting to say, like, maybe it isn't about her finding a man. Maybe it's her raising him. I also like the pilot ends with a good moment of her, again, talking to the baby. And she just has a throwaway line where she says, like, it's going to be a really tough job raising the only decent man in the city.
Yeah, I liked that line. I thought that was cute. That was very cute. It clearly was not. It was
good.
Clearly no, it was not good. But it was also that nobody was like thinking ahead to like the fact that by the second season, that kid looked like he was on the verge of actually talking.
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
they
like,
do the
he's only a baby for so long.
He's 18 months, right?
Yeah, like he was getting into toddlerville there. Like he was like very like, oh, he's like about to say mommy, like in a kid's voice.
I'm glad you brought that
up. The movies get into that, I think, though, don't they?
But they have a second kid, and that's why the pretense works.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Because going back to my original beef with this show, and that they didn't find a way to like, fix this for the whole. They went to all this effort to retool the show and give it a second season, but they never expended any energy to go back and try to figure out how to deal with that critical flaw, which is that once again, like in the movies, you have a story set within a limited span of time, and in a sitcom, this kid who's not a newborn at the start, is going to have a limited window in which the only way we know what they're thinking and feeling is through Tony Danza's voiceover. Soon, this kid is going to be telling us how they think and feel about these situations, and then we're screwed. Like,
then it's
not
done.
A premise where, in a lot of sitcoms, you have kids that age with the show, other than The Simpsons. And, in live action sitcoms, the kids grow up and the plots adapt, and that's great. And it's like fun to watch how a show rolls with that. And this premise, though, they
get one more year.
Yeah,
basically.
they get. That's it. That's at most one more year, and then they're screwed. It won't make sense because, like a sitcom in that era, network sitcom, right? You don't really embark on a sitcom unless you think you can squeeze like 6 to 9 seasons out of it. Otherwise, you're not wasting your time on these shows. These are not the way that like Netflix or the BBC does a show where they think, we'll do a couple seasons and then we're clear. Like, they need to make this go for a long time. So what was their game plan?
They didn't have one.
What was going to happen when this kid's 7?
They didn't have one.
No, they didn't have one. And I think in the movie, they delay it a little bit because I think they say Mikey's having a hard time. He won't talk. Like, he's like, like he's struggling to start talking. And then his sister comes along, and then there's like Roseanne Barr, like does the sister's voice, and it's like Bruce Willis and Roseanne talking to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, but then he eventually speaks as himself, and then it's like a big mind fuck for the audience. But yeah, like they don't go there and they don't think ahead for this sitcom version because they're just like, oh, we'll just,
Yeah, it's baby talk, yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. The other thing,
Which is not even the theme song of the show, weirdly enough. It's only the theme song in these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
In all the others, it's bread and butter. Like, that we like
Bread and butter.
Oh, yeah.
We
Yeah.
like toast and drink.
So they went to the trouble of making this terrible baby talk theme song, and then they
Yeah.
don't even really use it.
one little technical thing that they did clean up for the second season, though, was the editing of the baby talking moments, because for some reason in the pilot, whenever it would cut to the babies and have the voiceover, the editing was paced slow as molasses. Like it felt so stilted and awkward. Like it really didn't feel organic to the world. And in season 2, although I don't think they conquered the idea of like, how do you make that a real plot? They did at least edit those bits in so that it like really actually like felt like part of the world the way that they did in the movies. So
Yeah.
At least they figured out the technicals. I'll give them that.
Yeah, we had a lot of cutaways to babies, to close-ups of babies, because probably they only had like an hour to shoot the babies, and then they shot the rest of the scenes around the babies. But yeah, I agree. They pulled off the effect better in the second.
Yeah. Okay, so Brynn, do you want to tell us about how baby talk connects with Friends?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely 1 degree from Friends. Basically, George Clooney did an episode of Friends. And, there were probably many more connections because, of course, I believe when we did Camp Wilder, there was a connection via Mary Page Keller, but I was just like not wanting to take the time. So I was like, boom, one degree connection through the most iconic actor in the whole bunch of baby talk. So
yeah, that was my thoughts as well. I was like, oh yeah, Clooney was in Friends. So
yeah,
there you go.
Boom, connected.
Yeah.
And as for the spinoff,
yeah, I mean, this one was fun. It was fun to do like a real deep dive of the IMDb of this cast and
yeah, because it's a who's who of 1991.
It truly is. Like everybody in this show was like already pretty established and then went on to do way more. So the short answer is baby talk didn't ruin anyone's life. Like everyone kept working. The only people who didn't really have a career after this was the twins that played both Mickey, which was like the Jessup brothers. Paul and Ryan Jessup, who played Mickey, didn't act again after that. And the 2 young actors who played baby Danielle also didn't do anything after that.
You think it's because their parents saw a few episodes and they were just like, nah.
I really wonder, this is a complete sidebar, but I really wonder how that comes together. Like when they cast a baby, because like the baby has literally no consent in that. Like what, like how does it even work? Do the parents just see an ad somewhere and they just...
Yes.
Like,
actually, the second episode of the show is about Mickey getting noticed by a television
like,
producer.
is it literally just like, oh, that kid's cute, let's cast him, and hopefully he's well behaved, and then if they aren't fussy and able to like be chill on camera, then they're just cast?
I would assume so.
Probably.
Yep.
And then the parents just get the money for their baby. Like,
yeah. And then probably spend that money on fancy cars and not on saving it for their kids' college fund, which is probably what they should have done.
Yeah, well, we don't know. Maybe they did.
Probably overestimating how much baby actors are getting paid.
Yeah, they probably aren't getting paid that much. Yeah. But anyway, so everybody else, so we'll kind of just like go through it briefly. So obviously, Tony Danza continued to just be Tony Danza. Like he was already an icon and he was already, he was in the midst of continuing to be in Who's the Boss, and then he wrapped up Who's the Boss and went on to do countless other appearances in other TV shows. He himself had 2 other short-lived series, Hudson Street and the Tony Danza Show, which I think we've already mentioned in previous episodes.
Yeah, Jonathan Wolf.
Because he had scored Hudson Street, I believe.
And he scored the Tony Danza show.
Yeah, because he was like buddies with Tony Danza, and Tony Danza kept bringing him on to stuff.
And we're going to do those shows at some point, right?
We will do those shows, yeah. And he always plays a guy named Tony.
Really?
Yeah, he always plays Tony pretty much. Like, I think it would take... I don't know if in Taxi, his first big role, he played a Tony.
I'm pretty sure he does, actually.
But yeah, he just continued to be Tony Danza, and he just pops up everywhere, and it's always a delight to see him. Mary Page Keller, as we already mentioned, soon after her time on Baby Talk, she was cast as Ricky Wilder, the sister matriarch, I guess, of Camp Wilder, and then... she also continued to work. She had, like Tony Danza and like so many other actors, she had her own list of other short-lived ventures. Including, of course, Camp Wilder and this other show, Joe's Life, which I definitely think we should cover. And then despite having a couple of unsuccessful sitcoms under her belt, her talent has kept her working since, basically. And she's had more luck, I would say, in the 1-hour drama world. Like, that is kind of like where she's had the most success later in life. She's had recurring roles and guest star roles in shows like NYPD Blue, Commander-in-Chief, and Pretty Little Liars. We're not going to talk about Scott Baio, but everybody knows he kept working after that. Francesca Roberts is also a very prolific and successful TV actor. She played Anita in the 2nd season of Baby Talk. And this was obviously a quite insignificant blip in her long career. After Baby Talk, she appeared in tons of hit shows of the 90s, like basically all the like successful sitcoms, like Step by Step, Moesha, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Home Improvement, and a whole bunch more. Funny thing about her is she has played a judge in several TV shows. And she's played like a judge on at least 4 separate occasions. So I always find that very interesting when actors become very known to play a certain type of character. Like this happens a lot in procedurals, where it's like they're always playing a lawyer, they're always playing a cop, and then in her case, she's playing a judge often. Fun fact, one recent role that you may or may not recognize her from is she plays the health inspector in the Charlie Work episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
The Birdman episode? That's such a good episode.
That's a funny reference because I will say that there was a moment in the season 2 episode we watched where the super character reminded me a tiny bit of Charlie.
Oh, that's funny.
In that moment where he's like, you should apologize to me for not calling and saying you're going to be late. It goes on a bit of a rant about
when he's doing like his whole like mother bit. It does feel.
I think her deal is she plays a doctor a lot. So she plays these characters that are somewhat like an authority figure. Like she has that like vibe about her. And then so Polly Bergen, who played the Maggie character's mother in the 2nd season, also is like a very prolific actor. She continued to appear in series like Touched by an Angel, Commander-in-Chief. So a lot of people popped up in Commander-in-Chief, which is interesting. And Desperate Housewives. Sadly, she passed away in 2014, but basically she had a very long career after Baby Talk. Julia Duffy, so she joined the cast of Designing Women immediately after her stint on Baby Talk, which was the thing that I was kind of alluding to earlier, where I said her kind of uptight and kind of waspy like vibe. It really suited her in the role in Designing Women. So she was on that show for, I think, a couple seasons. And she's just been in everything. She's definitely somebody that I always saw, like, you know, growing up. She'd always just be on my TV screen, I feel. Like, she was just like that blonde lady. It was her and, like, there's like a few of them where I was just like, oh, it's that lady again. You know, she's still working. Most recently, she had a role in Shameless, a role in Looking, and Aaron, she was just in Black Monday. She was in an episode where she plays Bronson Pinchot's character's wife.
Okay.
So
Wait, when
she's
you
like-
say just in, do you mean something that was just shot, or like have we seen this episode?
We saw this episode.
We saw this? I don't remember
Yeah.
that, but okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. So basically, he's that like very debaucherous politician, or not, but he's not a politician. He's like a very like powerful guy who like his wife is like very conservative, so she doesn't know that he's out like partying and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously, we also failed to mention earlier that the voice of Danielle, of baby Danielle in season 2, Danielle number 2, is voiced by Vernee Watson, who was already a very well-established actor and who many of us remember as Will's mom, Vi, on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. After Baby Talk, she's like, you know, she was obviously in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She was in Sister, The Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, The Big Bang Theory. Most recently, she was in Bob Hart's Abishola and General Hospital. So she has had an interesting career because she kind of like oscillates between sitcoms and soaps. It's like a very like, you know, it's either a soap or a sitcom. And what else do we have? And obviously we have Mr. George Clooney. Everybody knows what the hell he's been up to. He's been like, you know, the guy in everybody's like the household name. But basically what happened is soon after he played Joe on Baby Talk, he had that recurring role in Roseanne. Do you guys remember him from Roseanne?
Yes, I do.
He played Booker Brooks.
Yeah, he was Roseanne's boss.
Yeah, he was Roseanne's boss, and I think Jackie's love interest.
He also asked to leave that show.
Yeah. So he just was not having a good time on sitcoms.
No.
But he also had luscious locks on that show.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as...
It's not quite this, though.
It's not quite this level, but it was also he had very big, like, voluminous hair in that show. And then, you know, he got cast in 2 other procedural dramas, including Bodies of Evidence, Sisters, and then he was cast as Dr. Doug Ross on ER, and the rest is history, basically.
And then like
Indeed.
1,000 A-list feature films.
Yes, and then he became the George Clooney that we all know now.
Yeah.
What's wild is he was also in that other ER show
Yes, he was.
in the 80s. Remember we talked about this? I can't remember. Was it?
We'll cover it. It's Elliot Gould
Yes.
is also in it. Yeah.
What
It's-
show is this?
It's called ER,
called
but it's like
ER.
E/R.
Yes, I remember.
But
we
it-
talked
it's
about
a
this.
comedy.
But it's the same premise. It's about an emergency room.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a sitcom
Yeah.
version.
So
Yeah.
he was also part of the ensemble of that, which is funny. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, you know, it is truly a who's who of people who were not slowed down, even though they were in this like really rotten stinker of a show. Like they all did fine. They all did just fine. So did the writers. So did the, you know, like the directors. Everybody was just fine. They all recovered. This was just an embarrassing little blip in their careers.
Can I tack on one other performer in this show?
Okay.
Tom Allen Robbins as
Yeah.
Dr. Elliot Fleischer in season 1,
Yeah.
who played the dad in the Seinfeld episode The Briss.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't
Also,
shout out that one.
For some reason, it seems like they recast that character in season 2, and I'm like, why, of all things, to bother to recast the pediatrician?
But
I
he's
don't
the
know.
love interest
Yeah.
of the whole first season.
Really?
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
I
The
did
whole
not catch that.
See, there's many things that are so confusing.
We
and it's,
talked about it earlier.
Oh, yeah,
I guess you did,
We did, but I didn't realize it was the whole first season.
Yeah. I thought you meant
But-
like briefly.
No, they're together. They were together when in the episodes that I saw, and then they
See, in my mind,
I feel like there's a lot of details that you miss when watching this show because it's very hard to engage with it. And
Mhm.
the wheels are turning the whole time because you're trying to think of like how they could have possibly kept this going.
all right, well, I guess we should check in with Mr. Producer and see what he has to say, given that this feels very much in his wheelhouse.
I guess.
All right, let's call him up. Hey, kid, how's it hanging?
Good, Mr. Producer. How are you?
Busy as a llama before payday.
A llama?
Only got a few minutes today, kid. Jody and I are getting ready to hit the road.
Where are you heading?
Kid, it's the start of my book tour.
Oh, right. What was that called again?
Ghosts, Witches, and Cousin Olivers. Tales of exhilaration, inspiration, and eroticism by an 80s producer.
Right. Kind of a mouthful of a title, isn't it?
Yeah, but it hooks you right from the title, don't it?
I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so.
Wait, wasn't I supposed to write the foreword for it?
Huh? All right. Well, truth be told, Gary managed to track down Matt Bopp after all these years. Get this, the guy's been living in a hut on a small beach on the Amalfi Coast, so we got him. You can write the next one.
Thanks. Gary, I thought your assistant's name was Jody.
No. Jody's my driver. Gary's my assistant and nephew.
Quite an operation you're running over there.
Yeah, good kids. So, what are you talking about over on the, that was a series?
We're talking about baby talk.
Oh, boy. I was hoping we never came to this one.
Were you involved?
Unfortunately.
What was so unfortunate? Well, besides the show.
Well, on this one, we found ourselves having to hire out new baby actors every single week for guest appearances.
It did have a lot of babies.
When you need that many little ones, there's only one place to go.
Where's that?
Sharon Fitzmatthews, top agent at Little AAA, the agency devoted strictly to baby actors.
She was tough?
On my deathbed, when I'm negotiating my final rest with the big guys up and downstairs, I'll tell them, you send me anywhere that doesn't have Sharon Fitzmatthews. The negotiation tactics this one employed. Brutal. The clauses, the entourages. We're talking per diems, nap times, personal tannings, drivers, grape peelers, stroller pushers, fruit snack handlers, stuffed bear wranglers. These kids, they come with an army and leave with a caravan of toys. They'll bankrupt your production and leave you begging for one more take of a goofy smile.
Sounds like quite an experience.
It was. Well, kid, Jody's back with the 82 Riviera. We're off.
Oh, do you know when you'll be back?
Kid, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a long tour, and it may be some time. I'll drop you a line from the road.
Well, good luck out there.
You too, kid. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.
Very dramatic sign off from Mr. Producer.
Yeah, he sounded like he had a lot on his mind.
Sounds like a troubled man.
I mean, I guess at this stage in your career, when your memoirs have finally come out, there is a lot of emotions attached to that.
I'm sure, we'll hear more from him in the coming days.
I certainly hope so.
Can't wait to read that book, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I know, it's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a few little leftovers here.
Of course you do.
Yeah, as I do typically. So in the first episode, going back to that point about how she was like not immediately the most likable character, and part of it was like the way that she kind of condescendingly talked down to like the service guys in the apartment.
Meaning the mother?
The mother.
Yeah.
I mean, they were terrible, but not for the fact that they were like blue collar workers, just because they as specific individuals were terrible.
I mean, they were gouging her pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were keeping the meter running,
but
basically.
The thing that I found a little not super likable, but also it kind of came back and she became on the receiving end of it later, and maybe that was sort of the point, was some very mean-spirited and rude lines that obviously, like, they're supposed to be funny, but like when she says, "I expected a better deal from hiring dregs," and she called them dregs.
Yeah.
That's pretty rude and mean. But then near the end of the episode, there's a similar thing with the whole like marriage proposal, and then she says no, and then when he's basically like putting her in her place, that he doesn't have any attraction to her, he's like, "I just don't feel anything for you. Nothing." And he's like reveling, like he's like loving, he's just like soaking up the joy that he's experiencing from laying on how little he likes of her. And and it's like, supposedly, like I get that I get the whole reason why like they shouldn't get married, and that he was just proposing because he thought it would be like something to do for his daughter or whatever. But like, we are to believe that they had a few weeks of at least somewhat positive dating. Like, we are to believe that they had a good experience over the last few weeks, like some charming times together. And
it's harsh.
Apparently,
it's harsh.
Yeah, it's harsh.
Real harsh.
Yeah, he just like drops that. And then my last thing is in season 2, episode 1, that bit early in the episode where as soon as we meet the super, the very first thing the super says is he suggests that she get a peephole for the door because it's Brooklyn. And not to reiterate the fact that that part of Brooklyn is not a dangerous neighborhood, at least not to my knowledge. It's a pretty posh neighborhood, but also it's a rented apartment and he's the super. If he thinks that the door should have a peephole, that's his job.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
good
there
point.
were a lot of things that were his job that he didn't do.
He's
and
good
that's
with
the whole
good
basis.
with the kid.
Yeah.
Good with the
which
kid,
has
though.
nothing to do with his job.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Not in his job description.
Yeah. Well,
No.
do either of you have any leftovers?
Nah, I'm good.
Hell no.
I'm so over this show.
As far as I'm concerned, the light is green, the trap is clean. I'm done.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. This was a fun one to talk about, at least.
Yeah.
And until next time, cut to credits. That Was a Show is created and hosted by Brynn Byrne, Andrew Barry Helmer, and myself, Aaron Yeger. It's a production of Radio Gizmo in Toronto, Canada. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. Follow us on Instagram and tell your friends about it. That Was a Show?
Radio Gizmo.